What if Snow White wasn't just a fairy tale, but a real-life noblewoman murdered in a twisted tale of jealousy and power? Not many people realize that the original version of Snow White was far from the fanciful fairy tale that we've come to know and love. The first version of Snow White was actually written by the infamous Brothers Grimm back in 1812. One of the major differences between the two versions is that the queen wasn't Snow White's stepmother. She was Snow White's biological mother. It wasn't until their second edition in 1819 that they changed her into a stepmother. This was likely to make the story more appropriate for children of the 19th century. Long before Disney turned it into a tale of singing dwarfs and true love's kiss, Snow White was a dark German folk tale filled with violent symbolism, child endangerment, and a mother's murderous envy. And what if it wasn't entirely fiction? Some historians believe the story may have been inspired by a real 16th century noblewoman who may have been the victim of a political assassination. Stay with us, because once you see the truth behind the origins of Snow White, you'll never look at this fairy tale the same way again. We all know the tale of Snow White, the teenage girl that's driven from her home by a jealous queen, hidden away in a cottage deep in the forest, and cared for by 7 strange little men. After eating a poisoned apple, she is laid to rest in a glass coffin where she is eventually revived by a prince's kiss. In the Grimm's original version, the queen is a parent consumed by jealousy toward her own 7-year-old daughter. When the magic mirror declares that Snow White has surpassed her in beauty, it throws the queen into a murderous rage. She orders her daughter's death and attempts to kill her personally. Not once, but 3 times. First, she disguises herself as a peddler selling lace bodices. She laces Snow White's corset so tightly that the girl collapses. It's not just an attack. It's a metaphor for the suffocating pressure to conform to beauty standards where appearances are prized over survival. When that fails, the queen disguises herself again, this time offering a beautiful comb. The comb, laced with poison, turns vanity into a deadly weapon. The moment it touches Snow White's scalp, she falls unconscious. Finally, the queen prepares a poisoned apple, with poison hidden in the red half. Here, the symbolism deepens. The apple reflects temptation and the loss of innocence, echoing Eve's downfall in the Garden of Eden. Unlike the bodice or comb, the apple's damage can't be undone. Snow White drops lifeless to the ground. Unable to revive her, the dwarves place her in a glass coffin. Frozen in time, her body doesn't decay. In the end, justice is brutally served. The queen is forced to wear red-hot iron shoes and dance until she dies, a grotesque punishment that turns her obsession with beauty and control against her. In the Grimm brothers' version, every object and act carries meaning beneath the surface. The lace bodice represents the suffocating pressure to conform to beauty standards. The poisoned comb turns vanity into a deadly weapon. The apple represents temptation and the loss of innocence, a direct echo of Eve in the Garden of Eden. Even the mirror isn't just about vanity. It's a symbol of surveillance, power, and the fear of being replaced. In 1937, America was deep in the Great Depression. Audiences wanted hope, not horror. The original Grimm tale, with its suffocation scenes, poisoned combs, necrophilic undertones, and red-hot iron shoes, was far too dark for the silver screen. Disney was building a new kind of entertainment, one that families could escape into. So, the story was softened. The queen became a melodramatic villain, not a symbol of maternal jealousy. The 7-year-old girl grew into a young adult. The gruesome murder attempts were trimmed down to just the poisoned apple, and the prince's obsession with a dead girl rewritten into a romantic kiss. So by the time Disney brought Snow White to the screen, she was no longer a child. She'd been aged into a wide-eyed teenager, romanticized into a symbol of innocence, and repackaged for mass consumption. But if we peel back the layers, past the animated musical numbers and even past the Grimm brothers, we find something stranger. Because Snow White might not be just a fairy tale at all. Historians have traced possible real-world inspirations for the original Grimm version, and the most compelling theory leads to a young noblewoman in 16th century Germany, Margaretha von Waldeck. Margaretha von Waldeck was born in 1533 to Count Philip IV of Waldeck-Wildungen, a German nobleman, and his wife Margaretha of East Frisia. Her mother died when she was young, and her father eventually remarried, giving us the classic stepmother trope found in so many fairy tales. She lived in a mining town where children were forced to work in horrific conditions, often left stunted from malnutrition, echoing the so-called dwarfs of the fairy tale. As a teenager, Margaretha was known for her intelligence, beauty, and poise, qualities that caught the attention of the aristocracy. But instead of being married off locally, she was sent away to the royal court in Brussels at just 16 years old. This wasn't just a family favor, it was a strategic political move. At the time, Brussels was part of the Habsburg Empire, under the rule of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Margaretha was sent there to be groomed for court life, possibly even matched with a rich noble. While living in Brussels, Margaretha became part of the household of Maria of Hungary, who was Philip's aunt and the then governor of the Netherlands. Margaretha, young and striking, stood out. She was reportedly noticed by Prince Philip himself, the heir to the Spanish throne and one of the most powerful royal figures in Europe. Although there's no confirmed evidence of a formal relationship, rumors spread that Philip was enamored with her, and that the two may have been romantically involved, or at least that he had intentions toward her. But such a match would have been scandalous. Margaretha, while noble, was not of high enough rank to be a suitable match for the future King of Spain. And that's where things take a darker turn. Soon after the rumors of their alleged relationship began circulating, Margaretha fell gravely ill. Witness accounts suggested symptoms consistent with poisoning, not disease. Many believe she was deliberately silenced, either by members of the Spanish court who saw her as a political risk, or those who saw Margaretha as a threat to carefully laid dynastic plans. Whatever the reason was, Margaretha suddenly died at the age of 21. Her death was so suspicious that even those close to the royal court believed it had been arranged. Modern adaptations like Disney's version cleaned up the story to make it more commercial and family-friendly. They replaced political murder with a magical apple and child labor with quirky miners. These changes weren't just for children. They were a way to conceal the true dark history, the stories of power, political maneuvering, and the women who were usually caught in the crossfire. At its core, Snow White has always been about power, beauty, and control. But each version tells a different story. The Grimm tale is a dark warning about jealousy within families, violence against innocence, and the lengths people will go to preserve power. It explores maternal envy, bodily harm, and the fear of female beauty as a threat. Later versions, especially Disney's, shift the focus to romance, purity, and redemption, turning Snow White into a passive heroine whose beauty is admired, not punished. The Queen becomes a cautionary tale about vanity, while the dwarves turn into lovable sidekicks instead of mysterious forest guardians. What began as a brutal fable about violence, envy, and control over women's bodies was reimagined as a story of true love conquering evil, comforting, safe, and far removed from the shadows it came from.